At exactly 2:13 a.m., a dying man slipped a silver flash drive into Evelyn Hart's coat and whispered, "Don't trust the doctor." But before she could ask which doctor he meant, 3 armed men entered the bar, and the most dangerous mafia boss in Chicago stopped pretending he wasn't watching her. The Black Harbor Lounge crouched beneath the elevated train tracks on the south side, hidden behind rain-streaked glass and a black door with no sign above it. It was the kind of place where politicians drank beside criminals, and everyone understood that asking the wrong question could shorten a life. Blue light shimmered across rows of expensive liquor bottles. A jazz record turned quietly beneath the murmur of guarded conversations, and cold November rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingernails. Evelyn sat alone at the far end of the mahogany bar, one hand wrapped around a shot of tequila she had not yet touched. She wore a deep burgundy dress beneath a dark wool coat, elegant enough to suggest she had once belonged somewhere better and simple enough to reveal that she no longer cared who noticed. Her body was soft, full, and unmistakably feminine, but there was nothing fragile about the way she held herself. Long, dark auburn hair fell in loose waves around a beautiful round face, and the warm hazel eyes reflected in the mirror behind the bar looked exhausted rather than drunk. 3 hours earlier, an attorney had called to tell her that the medical board had denied her final appeal. 4 years of petitions, testimony, and humiliating hearings had ended in 7 polite sentences. Her license would remain revoked. Her name would remain attached to the deaths she had tried to prevent. The men who had buried the evidence would continue sleeping peacefully in homes larger than the emergency ward where her career had died. Evelyn lifted the glass and watched the amber liquid tremble beneath the chandelier light. "To accepting what can't be changed," she murmured, although she hated the words as soon as they left her mouth. Across the room, Roman DeLuca heard them. He sat at table 7 with his back to the wall, a position chosen by habit rather than preference. At 38, Roman had the quiet, physical authority of a man who had survived long enough to stop proving he was dangerous. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a black Italian suit that could not hide the roughness beneath it. His black hair was slightly too long at the front, dark stubble shadowed a hard jaw, and a thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, making his cold gray eyes appear even more severe. He looked polished from a distance, but closer inspection revealed battered knuckles, a faint burn mark near his wrist, and the stillness of someone who had learned that sudden movement often came before gunfire. 2 men sat with him, both armed, both alert, but Roman's attention had remained on Evelyn since she entered. It was not merely her beauty, though he had noticed that immediately. It was the contradiction. She looked like a woman carrying fresh heartbreak, yet she had chosen the only seat that gave her a clear view of both exits. She had checked the mirror twice without turning her head. She had noticed the bartender hiding a shotgun beneath the register. She had counted the men at Roman's table, recognized which one was left-handed, and dismissed them all without once making direct eye contact. "You know her?" Roman's lieutenant, Luca Moretti, asked quietly. "No." Roman turned his glass once between his fingers. "But she knows how to watch a room." He was supposed to be meeting Daniel Reese, a senior accountant who had spent the past week examining missing revenue from Roman's shipping operations. Daniel had requested the meeting in person, refused to speak over the phone, and insisted that someone inside the DeLuca organization had been moving unauthorized cargo through the southern docks. He was 11 minutes late, which was unlike him. At 2:14, the front door opened, and Daniel stumbled inside. Rain darkened his gray overcoat. One lens of his glasses was cracked, and his left hand pressed hard against his abdomen. Nobody reacted at first. The Black Harbor was full of men who entered looking injured and left looking worse. Then Daniel lifted his head, found Roman across the room, and took one unsteady step forward. Roman's expression changed. He did not rise, but Luca did. "That's Reese." Evelyn saw the blood before anyone else did. It was not visible on Daniel's coat. It appeared in the pale waxiness around his mouth, the sweat shining along his hairline, and the way his right shoulder sagged as if his body had forgotten how to hold itself together. She set down her tequila. Daniel tried to cross the room, but his knees buckled beside her stool. Evelyn caught him beneath the arms before his skull struck the edge of the bar. His weight drove her backward, Yet she held him, lowering him carefully to the floor. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked. Daniel's breath came in shallow, wet pulls. His eyes flicked toward Roman, then toward the entrance. His fingers closed around Evelyn's coat as though he were frightened she might leave him. "Inside," he whispered. "Someone inside." Evelyn reached beneath his coat and felt warmth spreading across his shirt. Blood. Too much of it. "Call 911, she ordered the bartender. Daniel shook his head violently. "No hospital. You don't have enough time to be difficult." She opened his shirt and found a small puncture wound beneath the ribs, but the blood loss did not match the injury. His pupils were uneven. A strange, sweet chemical odor lingered on his breath. Poison and trauma. Someone had wanted the wound to appear fatal while ensuring he died even if the bleeding was controlled. Daniel pushed something cold into the pocket of her coat. His lips barely moved. "Don't trust the doctor." The front door opened again. 3 men entered wearing dark coats slick with rain. They were too sober, too coordinated, and too interested in Daniel to be ordinary customers. The first man surveyed the room and smiled as though he had arrived for a private joke. Roman recognized none of them, which meant they were either very foolish or protected by someone who expected them to survive. The leader approached Evelyn. "That man stole something from my employer," he said. "Step away." Evelyn kept 2 fingers against Daniel's throat. His pulse was slowing. "He needs an ambulance. He needs to be searched." The man reached for her shoulder. Evelyn looked up at him, and something in her face made his hand hesitate. She was afraid. Roman could see it in the tension at the base of her neck, but fear had not taken control of her. It had sharpened her. "Touch me," she said quietly, "and you will lose the use of that arm." The man laughed and grabbed her wrist. Evelyn moved before his companions understood she had decided to fight. She rose with his momentum, twisted her trapped hand inward, and drove the knuckles of her free hand beneath his collarbone. The strike looked almost gentle. The man's right arm went limp instantly. Shock erased the smile from his face. Evelyn pivoted, caught his wrist, and forced him down across the bar, with his paralyzed arm pinned behind him. The bartender had been cutting citrus beside her. Evelyn took the narrow steel cocktail pick from the board and placed its point against the soft hollow beneath the man's jaw. "The nerve bundle I struck controls most of your arm," she told him, her breathing controlled. "It will recover. Probably. The artery beneath this pick is less forgiving." One of the other men reached beneath his coat. Roman raised 2 fingers, and Luca drew his pistol beneath the table. No one fired. Not yet. Evelyn looked at the armed man through the mirror. "Before you pull that weapon, understand something. Your friend on the floor has maybe 90 seconds before his breathing becomes too shallow to support his heart. The man under my hand will bleed out before you clear your holster. You can leave with both of them alive, or you can discover how steady my hands are." The lounge fell silent except for the rain and Daniel's failing breath. The third man stared toward table 7 and finally recognized Roman. Color drained from his face. He touched his partner's elbow. "We're leaving." Evelyn lifted the cocktail pick only when all 3 men had backed toward the door. The leader clutched his useless arm and glared at her with hatred sharpened by humiliation. "You have no idea who you just involved yourself with." "Neither do you," Roman said from the shadows. The men froze. Roman did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The leader looked at him, understood the mistake, and left without another word. Evelyn immediately dropped beside Daniel again. "Stay with me." She checked his airway and pressed both hands over the hidden wound. "What did they give you?" Daniel's eyes found Roman one last time. There was apology in them, and terror. He tried to speak, but his body convulsed once beneath Evelyn's hands. Then he went still. She continued compressions long after she understood they would not change the outcome. The bartender knelt beside her, but Evelyn shook her head. "He's gone." For 1 second, grief crossed her face with such naked force that Roman felt it from across the room. Then she closed Daniel's eyes, wiped the blood from her hands with a bar towel, and stood. Roman approached. Up close, he was even more intimidating, his presence seeming to reduce the space around him. Evelyn looked at the scar near his brow, the expensive watch, the hard lines of his hands, and the two armed men behind him. "He came here for you," she said. "Yes. Then whatever killed him is your responsibility now." Roman studied her. Most people softened their voices when they realized who he was. Evelyn's became colder. "What did he say to you?" he asked. Her fingers touched the pocket containing the flash drive, but only for a fraction of a second. Roman noticed. She noticed him noticing. "He asked for help," she replied. "And you failed." Pain moved through her eyes, but she did not look away. Yes, that answer surprised him. So did the absence of excuses. Evelyn picked up her coat and placed cash beside the untouched tequila. "Tell the police I left before the shooting." There was no shooting. Not yet. She walked toward the door. Roman stepped into her path. The air between them tightened. "Your name," he said. "You first. Roman DeLuca." Recognition appeared in her face, followed not by fear but weary irritation. "Of course you are. And you?" She moved around him, opening the door to the freezing rain. "A woman who wants nothing from you." Roman watched her disappear into the wet blue darkness. Behind him, Luca exhaled. "Should I follow her?" Roman looked toward Adrian Cross, who had entered through the private hallway during the confrontation and now stood beside table 7. Adrian was in his late 50s, silver-haired, composed, and trusted more deeply than anyone still alive. Roman had expected concern at Daniel's death. Instead, for one fleeting moment, he saw recognition in Adrian's eyes as he stared at the door Evelyn had passed through. "Do you know her?" Roman asked. Adrian's expression settled smoothly. "No." Roman held his gaze. "Find out who she is." Adrian nodded. "And what should I do when I find her?" Roman looked down at Daniel's blood darkening the floor, then toward the empty doorway. "Nothing. Not until I understand why a dying man chose her." 3 nights later, Roman discovered the answer might cost him his life. The message arrived just before midnight, directing him to a warehouse near the river where Daniel's missing records would supposedly be exchanged. Adrian advised caution but confirmed the source appeared reliable. Roman went with 4 men. The warehouse was empty. The first bullet shattered the windshield of his armored SUV. The second killed the driver. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the alley, precise and disciplined, coming from positions only someone with access to Roman's security route could have known. Roman returned fire, dragged Luca behind the engine block, and understood with a cold certainty that Daniel had been right. Someone inside his organization had sold him out. A round tore through Roman's lower side as he crossed the alley. He felt the impact before the pain, a brutal punch that spun him against a brick wall. His men forced open a path, but Roman refused the nearest safehouse. If the enemy knew the route, they knew the locations. His private physician did not answer. Neither did the backup doctor. Every trusted door suddenly looked like part of the trap. Blood soaked beneath Roman's coat as Luca drove through the rain. Roman's vision blurred, and one image returned with strange clarity. Warm hazel eyes, blood-covered hands, and a woman who had looked directly at him without asking permission to be brave. "Evelyn Hart," Luca said, reading from the report Roman had ordered and then almost forgotten. "Former trauma surgeon, lives 8 minutes from here." Roman closed his eyes. "Take me to her." By the time they reached Evelyn's building, the alley was too narrow for the car. Roman ordered Luca to draw the attackers away and climbed the fire escape alone, leaving blood on every rusted step. He reached the 2nd floor through discipline, the 3rd through anger, and the 4th through something close to instinct. A kitchen light glowed behind a frosted window. He struck the glass once. Inside, Evelyn turned from the sink. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she saw the blood, opened the window, and stared at the feared Mafia boss collapsing against her fire escape. "You," she breathed. Roman tried to speak, but his legs failed. Evelyn caught him and dragged his coat aside to inspect the wound. Her expression changed when she saw the unusual stitching along the edge of an old scar near his ribs, a pattern she had last seen in photographs from the medical conspiracy that destroyed her career. She looked from the scar to Roman's fading eyes, every trace of surprise hardening into suspicion. "You didn't come here by accident," she whispered. Then Roman lost consciousness in her arms. Roman woke to pain before he woke to light. It burned through his side in slow, white-hot waves, each pulse dragging him toward consciousness against his will. The first thing he heard was metal striking porcelain. The second was a woman's voice, calm enough to be insulting. "Move again, and I will let you bleed on the floor." He opened his eyes. Evelyn Hart stood over him beneath the harsh yellow light of her kitchen. Her dark auburn hair twisted into a loose knot, several damp strands clinging to her cheeks. She had changed out of the burgundy dress and into a pale shirt and dark scrub pants. But Roman's blood had already soaked through the fabric at her waist and along one sleeve. She looked softer without the coat, more human, more tired. Yet the gun in her left hand was aimed directly between his eyes. In her right hand she held a curved, surgical needle. Roman glanced down. His jacket and shirt had been cut open. The bullet wound in his lower side had been cleaned, packed, and partially closed. A bowl beside him held bloodied gauze, fragments of fabric, and the flattened edge of a round she had removed. "You used my gun," he said, his voice rough. "I considered using it differently." Evelyn pulled another stitch through his skin. Roman's jaw tightened, but he did not give her the satisfaction of reacting. "No anesthetic? You had enough whiskey in your system to complicate the dosage, and you were losing too much blood for me to gamble with your breathing. So you stitched me awake. You were unconscious for the worst of it. That is reassuring. It was not meant to be." She tied the knot, cut the thread, and set the needle down without lowering the weapon. Roman studied her face. There was no panic in it, but anger lived beneath the control, not fear of him. Anger at what his presence had brought into her home. "How long?" he asked. 43 minutes. "My men, gone. The one with the broken nose dragged your car away before anyone called the police. Luca." I did not ask his name. Roman shifted his weight, and pain knifed beneath his ribs. Evelyn pressed the barrel of the gun harder against his forehead. I was clear. "You always point weapons at patients?" "Only the ones who climb into my apartment carrying enough trouble to get everyone in the building killed." Roman looked past her. The kitchen was small but immaculate. Medical textbooks were stacked beside the refrigerator. Locked cabinets lined one wall. A child's drawing of a red house and a smiling woman had been taped near the window. Nothing in the room suggested wealth, but everything suggested purpose. "You saved me," he said. "I stopped you from dying. There is a difference?" "A large one." She finally lowered the gun, removed the magazine, cleared the chamber, and placed each piece on a different counter. "Saving someone implies attachment. I made a medical decision." Roman pushed himself onto one elbow. "You made that decision after recognizing me." "Unfortunately." And after seeing the scar, her hand paused over the bloodied instruments. Roman noticed. "What did you recognize?" he asked. Evelyn turned back to him. "You answer first. Who repaired the wound near your ribs?" "Years ago. 4 years and 3 months, judging by the tissue. A physician who worked privately for my family." "Name." Roman's eyes hardened. "You are in no position to interrogate me." Evelyn gave a humorless laugh. "You are half naked on my kitchen floor because I am the only reason your blood is still inside your body. I would argue that gives me a very specific position." Roman almost smiled. Almost. Dr. Malcolm Voss. For the first time, Evelyn's control slipped. Her face went still, then pale. "You know him," Roman said. "He was the consulting surgeon who signed the report that destroyed my career." The room seemed to narrow around them. Roman watched her move to the sink, rinse blood from her fingers, and grip the edge of the counter until her knuckles whitened. 4 years ago, she continued, 3 patients died in the emergency department after receiving counterfeit epinephrine. I proved the medication had been replaced before it reached the hospital. Voss testified that I had administered the wrong dosage and altered the records afterward. "Did you?" Evelyn turned so sharply the question felt like an insult. "No." Roman held her gaze. "Then why did the board believe him? Because he had money, influence, and 8 respected men willing to repeat the same lie. I had grief-stricken families, missing inventory records, and a nurse who disappeared before she could testify. Roman looked toward the old scar at his ribs. Voss treated me after a dock shooting that same year. At which dock? South Harbor 12. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, suspicion had replaced anger. That dock appears in the purchasing records from my hospital. Roman sat up farther despite the pain. What purchasing records? Evelyn did not answer. Her eyes shifted toward the coat hanging over the back of a chair. Roman followed the movement. The dying man at the lounge gave you something. He gave me a warning, and something else. You noticed. I notice everything. Then notice this. Evelyn stepped closer. Daniel Reese died because he trusted someone. You were his employer. And 3 nights later you were ambushed. That means either your organization is compromised, or this entire thing began with you. Roman's expression became cold enough to empty a room. Be careful. No. You be careful. You came into my home bleeding from a root tied to the people who ruined my life. I have no reason to believe you are the victim in this story. Roman pushed himself to his feet. The sudden movement sent blood rushing beneath the fresh bandage, but he remained upright. At full height, he filled the kitchen with controlled menace. Evelyn did not step back. If I were responsible, he said quietly, you would never have seen the evidence. That is exactly what a responsible man would say. I am many things, Dr. Hart. Careless is not one of them. The title struck her. Do not call me that. It is what you are. Not anymore. Roman's eyes moved over the shelves of supplies, the coded labels, the trauma bag beside the table. You still treat people. Evelyn's mouth tightened. People the system refuses to see. Without a license. Are you planning to report me? No. Then stop speaking as though you are doing me a favor. Roman took one step toward her. You are alive because the men who followed me have not found this building yet. I was alive before you arrived. That has changed. Because of you. Yes. The honesty stopped her for a moment. Roman continued. Whoever ambushed me knew my route. Whoever killed Daniel wanted the object he gave you. If they know your identity, they will come. Then leave. I am not leaving you unprotected. Evelyn stared at him. I did not ask for protection. You do not need to ask. That is not protection. That is control wearing a better suit. Roman's jaw hardened. You are in danger. And you believe danger gives you authority over me? I believe experience does. Your experience created the danger. A phone vibrated inside Roman's ruined jacket. He reached for it, saw Luca's name, and answered. Speak. Luca's voice was faint but urgent. We found 2 surveillance vehicles near the block. One moved, one did not. We also intercepted a call mentioning a woman, former doctor, 4th floor. Roman's gaze settled on Evelyn. How long? Maybe 5 minutes, less if they are already inside. Roman ended the call. Pack what matters. Evelyn did not move. No, this is not a debate. Everything is a debate when it concerns my life. You can argue with me from a secure location. I have patients coming here at 6. Cancel them. Some of them cannot go anywhere else. Roman stepped closer, his voice dropping. They cannot come here if this building becomes a firing range. Evelyn hated that he was right, but hatred did not make the truth disappear. She crossed to the coat, reached into the pocket, and pulled out the silver flash drive. Roman watched her plug it into an old laptop. The screen filled with encrypted folders, shipping codes, hospital invoices, and lists of payment transfers. Most files remained locked, but one opened automatically. Evelyn scrolled through several pages, then stopped breathing. Roman moved beside her. On the screen was the name Street, Catherine Medical Center, the hospital where Evelyn had worked. Beneath it appeared 12 shipments routed through DeLuca-controlled docks. The dates matched the months before the counterfeit deaths. You said you knew nothing, Evelyn whispered. I did not. Your name is on the routes. My organization owns the routes. That does not mean I approved every container. How convenient. Roman leaned closer. Look at the authorization column. The initials read AC. Evelyn frowned. Who is AC? Roman's face changed so slightly that another person might have missed it. Adrian Cross. The man from the lounge? My consigliere. The man you trusted to investigate me. Roman took out his phone and called Adrian. No answer. He called again. Nothing. Evelyn stared at him. You still believe he is loyal? He raised me after my father died. That was not my question. Roman's expression closed. Loyalty is not erased by one set of initials. Neither is evidence. A muted crack sounded outside. Evelyn's eyes lifted toward the window, a fraction of a second, before the glass exploded. Roman moved on instinct. He threw himself against her, driving them both to the floor as a bullet tore through the upper cabinet and buried itself in the wall. Plates shattered above them. Evelyn felt Roman's body cover hers, heavy and hot, his injured side pressed against her hip. A second shot punched through the refrigerator. Roman drew a compact pistol from an ankle holster. East roof, Evelyn whispered. Third building, high angle. Roman looked down at her. You can tell that from 2 shots? The entry points are descending. The first round came through the top quarter of the window, the second through the center. Shooter adjusted after you moved me. Another shot struck the counter. Evelyn pointed toward a narrow door beside the pantry. Maintenance stairs. They connect to the basement laundry room. My men are in the alley. Then your men are exposed. Roman keyed his phone. Luca, suppress the east roof. 2 teams. Move now. Gunfire erupted outside moments later, sharp and violent. Roman pulled Evelyn to her knees. She broke away and crawled toward the locked medical cabinet. Leave it, he ordered. No. Evelyn, these records contain names, addresses, immigration histories, abuse reports. If anyone gets them, my patients disappear. Roman looked at the cabinet, then toward the window. How heavy? Too heavy. Roman called Luca again. Send Marco through the rear entrance. He retrieves a locked cabinet from the kitchen before anything else. Evelyn stared at him. Your life is in danger. So are theirs. It was the first decision he had made that centered something she valued rather than something he wanted. The moment did not create trust, but it disturbed the certainty of her distrust. They moved through the pantry and descended the narrow stairs while Roman's men exchanged fire outside. Blood began seeping through his bandage again. Evelyn noticed but said nothing until they reached the basement. You tore the sutures. I have had worse. That is not a medical argument. You are no longer licensed to make medical arguments. She looked at him with open fury. Say that again, and I will leave you here. Roman's mouth curved despite the pain. There she is. They crossed the laundry room and entered an old service tunnel beneath the building. Luca waited at the far end with 2 armed men and a dark SUV positioned behind a steel gate. Evelyn stopped before climbing inside. Where are you taking me? A secure warehouse, Roman said. No one outside my inner circle knows it exists. Your inner circle appears to be the problem. Luca's eyes flicked toward Roman, but Roman only said, Then we will keep the circle small. The safehouse was an abandoned printing warehouse near the river, its upper floor converted into a guarded residence. Roman's men secured the perimeter while Evelyn forced him onto a metal table beneath industrial lights and reopened the damaged sutures. Their silence lasted until she finished. I stay until morning, she said. You stay until the threat is gone. Then I leave now. Roman met her gaze. What do you want? 3 conditions. Name them. No one goes near my patients unless I give permission. You stop investigating my personal life, and you never call me yours, your responsibility, or anything else that turns me into property. Roman's face became unreadable. You are under my protection. That phrase is exactly the problem. Protection that ignores my choice, she said, tying the final stitch, is just another kind of prison. For several seconds, only the distant river and the hum of the warehouse generators filled the room. Roman had been obeyed, feared, and flattered for most of his adult life. Very few people challenged him. None did it while holding a needle inside his body. "Agreed," he said at last. Evelyn searched his face for deception. "All three?" "All three." "You hesitated." "I dislike the third. That is why it exists." Hours passed. Roman rested in a worn leather chair while Evelyn worked through the flash drive. Near dawn, she found a partially corrupted photograph buried inside a shipping folder. Adrian Cross stood outside Street Catherine Medical Center beside Malcolm Voss. A date stamp placed the meeting 2 days before the first counterfeit death. Roman stared at the image. It proves they met. The payments prove more. Not enough. Because the evidence is weak, or because the truth hurts. His eyes turned hard. Adrian kept me alive when my father was killed. Then learning what he became will hurt. Evelyn faced him fully. But innocent people already paid for your comfort. Roman stood too quickly, anger burning through the exhaustion. Before he could answer, Luca entered carrying a phone. "We received a video." Evelyn took it. On the screen, a young woman sat bound to a chair in what appeared to be a storage room. Her name was Marisol Vega, one of Evelyn's patients and the mother of 2 small children. A distorted voice spoke from behind the camera. "Bring the drive to Pier 6 by noon, or the doctor loses another patient." Evelyn reached for her coat. Roman blocked the door. "No, move. It is a trap." "Of course it is. Then you are not walking into it." "She is there because of me. She is there because they want the drive." "That distinction will not matter to her children." Roman's voice lowered. "You will stay here." Evelyn looked past him and saw 2 guards taking position outside. "You gave me your word. I agreed to protect your choices. I did not agree to let you commit suicide. You do not get to redefine consent when it becomes inconvenient. I get to keep you alive." Roman stepped out and locked the reinforced door behind him. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, staring at the metal barrier while the sound of his footsteps disappeared down the hall. He had protected her records. He had accepted her conditions. He had listened when no one else had. And the moment her decision frightened him, he had taken it away. What do you think was Roman right to lock Evelyn inside because the enemy was waiting for her? Or did he cross the line by taking away her choice? Tell us what you would have done in Evelyn's place. Evelyn waited until Roman's footsteps disappeared, then counted to 10. The guards outside shifted once, their shoes scraping lightly across the concrete corridor. She tested the reinforced door, already knowing it would not open. Roman had given her conditions, accepted them, and broken the most important one before sunrise. The anger came first, hot and clean. Beneath it sat something more dangerous, disappointment. For one brief hour, she had believed he might actually understand the difference between keeping someone safe and taking control of their life. She looked around the converted office where he had confined her. One narrow window faced the river, too high and too small to climb through. A steel desk stood against the wall. Beside it, half hidden beneath a canvas tarp, was an old freight control panel from the building's printing days. Evelyn crossed the room and pulled the tarp away. The buttons were dead, but a faded diagram showed a service lift connecting the upper floor to the loading bay below. She opened the panel with a screwdriver from the desk drawer and found 2 corroded wires still carrying power. "You should have searched the room better," she murmured. It took her less than 4 minutes to restore the circuit. The floor trembled softly as machinery awakened somewhere behind the wall. Outside, one of the guards knocked. "Everything all right, Dr. Hart?" "Fine," she answered. "Your boss is still impossible." The man gave a nervous laugh. Evelyn pressed the hidden release. A narrow section of wall slid open, revealing a rusted freight platform descending into darkness. Before stepping inside, she returned to the laptop and copied the flash drive onto a second device she found in Roman's equipment case. Most of the files were encrypted, but the copy would look convincing long enough to buy time. She left the original hidden inside the lining of her medical bag, placed the duplicate on the desk, and wrote a message on the back of a shipping invoice. "Pier 6 is too obvious. Check where the medicine was stored before it reached the hospital." She added 3 numbers beneath it, the emergency drug code from the street. Catherine Deaths then stepped onto the freight lift and lowered herself toward the loading bay. By the time the guards forced open the office door, Evelyn was already 3 blocks away in a delivery van borrowed from a bakery owner whose daughter she had once treated without charge. Roman learned she was gone while standing inside the warehouse command room. Studying maps of Pier 6, Luca entered with an expression that told him the news before he spoke. She found an old freight lift. Roman looked up slowly. And the guards? Alive, embarrassed. They should be. Luca placed the duplicate flash drive and Evelyn's note on the table. Roman read it once. His anger arrived immediately, but fear followed so closely he could not separate them. She took the original? We do not know. Roman stared at the numbers beneath the message. Drug code. You recognize it? It was in the hospital files. He moved to the map. Street. Catherine's counterfeit medication had been distributed through a pharmaceutical warehouse before entering the hospital system. There were only 3 abandoned medical storage facilities near the southern docks. One stood less than a mile from Evelyn's underground clinic. Roman's hand closed around the edge of the table. She had not gone to Pier 6. She had gone where she believed Marisol would be taken if the video was false. Get the cars. Luca hesitated. The captains are already waiting for you at South Harbor. If you miss that meeting, Valenti takes control of 2 routes before noon. Roman turned toward him. Then let him. Those routes represent half the southern operation. I know what they represent. Your father built them. Roman's eyes became flat and cold. And someone used them to poison people while I congratulated myself for controlling the city. Get the cars. Evelyn reached her underground clinic just after 7. The clinic occupied the basement of a closed neighborhood library, hidden behind shelves of donated books and an old maintenance door. She entered through the alley and found the front room empty. No overturned chairs. No blood. No sign of forced entry. Marisol, she called. A curtain moved near the back. Marisol Vega stepped out wearing jeans and a gray sweatshirt, frightened but unharmed. Dr. Hart? Relief nearly weakened Evelyn's knees. You're safe. Why wouldn't I be? Marisol asked. A man called me last night and said you needed me to come in early. But then another man arrived and told me to wait upstairs. Evelyn's instincts sharpened. What man? Older, gray hair, expensive coat. The clinic door closed behind her. Adrian Cross stood with a pistol resting loosely at his side. He looked as composed as he had at the lounge, his silver hair perfectly arranged, his dark overcoat untouched by the rain. 2 armed men appeared from the shadows behind him. You have excellent instincts, Evelyn, Adrian said. Unfortunately, they are usually 1 step behind mine. Evelyn moved subtly between him and Marisol. Let her leave. She was never the target. Adrian nodded to one of the men who guided Marisol toward the stairs. Marisol resisted. But Evelyn said, Go, take your children, and stay with your sister. What about you? I will be fine. Adrian smiled faintly. You always did lie beautifully when protecting patients. Marisol was taken upstairs. Evelyn waited until she heard the outer door close. You knew me before the lounge. Of course. You recognized my name when Roman asked. Your name has cost me a great deal of money over the years. Evelyn felt the old rage rising, but she kept her voice steady. You framed me. Adrian walked toward a cabinet of medication and ran 1 finger over its lock. You were becoming inconvenient. 3 deaths would have remained 3 unfortunate deaths if you had not tested the medication yourself. People were dying. People die every day, not because emergency drugs were replaced with colored water. His smile disappeared. The counterfeit operation was efficient. Hospitals paid full price. We supplied a cheaper product. Most patients received enough active ingredient to survive. Most. Business is never perfect. Evelyn stared at him with disgust. You used Roman's docks. Roman inherited a kingdom built by men more practical than he is. He enjoys believing he made it respectable. In reality, he stopped asking profitable questions. Did he know? Not the details. Adrian tilted his head. Does that absolve him? The question struck precisely where Adrian intended. Evelyn thought of Roman insisting that ownership of the roots did not mean approval. She thought of the names on the hospital records and the money that had flowed upward into an empire he controlled. "No," she said. Adrian seemed pleased. "Good. I would hate for attraction to weaken your judgment. This has nothing to do with attraction. Everything has something to do with power. Roman saw you and wanted you. He is accustomed to wanting and taking. You simply made the mistake of believing his attention was respect." Evelyn's jaw tightened. Adrian noticed. "He locked you in a room, did he not? And I escaped." "Yes, that is what makes you useful." He extended his free hand. "The drive. I do not have it. You brought it. You are welcome to search me." One of the men moved forward. Adrian stopped him. "She expects that." He looked toward Evelyn's medical bag. The lining. Evelyn's silence confirmed too much. Adrian took the bag, cut through the inner seam, and removed the original silver flash drive. "Daniel always underestimated me," he said. "So did Malcolm Voss. He began demanding a larger share after he destroyed your career. I arranged his disappearance 2 years ago. You killed him. I corrected an imbalance." Evelyn glanced toward the rear exit. Adrian saw it. "You will not leave through there. You are coming with me." "Where?" "To the distribution center where this began. Roman will follow. You want him there." "I want him angry. Angry men make visible mistakes." Adrian's men seized her arms. Evelyn did not fight yet. Fighting before understanding the room was desperation, not courage. They drove her to an abandoned pharmaceutical facility near the river, a long concrete building surrounded by rusted loading docks and broken security lights. Inside, conveyor belts divided the warehouse floor, while sealed medical storage rooms stretched along the eastern wall. Evelyn was tied to a metal chair beneath a hanging industrial lamp. Adrian connected the flash drive to a computer and began decrypting its contents. "The records will show your payments," Evelyn said, "and the hospital executives, and every shipment, only if anyone sees them." A side door opened. Serena Ward entered with 4 armed mercenaries. She was tall, elegant, and dressed in a charcoal coat, her expression carrying the controlled irritation of someone who had just discovered she was not the smartest person in the room. She looked at Evelyn, then at Adrian. "You said Roman would be here." "He will. You also said the doctor controlled the evidence." "She did." Serena approached the computer. "And after Roman arrives? He gives up the southern ports. To me." Adrian smiled. "Naturally." Serena studied him for a long moment. "You have been lying to both sides for years." "I have been managing both sides. That is not the same thing. It is when the result is profitable." Evelyn watched Serena's eyes. There was no surprise in them, only calculation. She had not known everything, but she knew enough to understand Adrian intended to leave no partners alive. "He plans to kill you, too," Evelyn said. Serena did not look at her. "Quiet. The moment Roman is dead, Adrian will blame the counterfeit network on you. He gets his empire. You get a grave and a convenient reputation." Adrian sighed. "This is why doctors should remain occupied with medicine." Serena turned to him. "Is she wrong? She is frightened." "She does not look frightened. She hides it well." Serena's hand moved closer to her weapon. Before the tension could break, Adrian's phone rang. He answered, listened, and smiled. "Roman has abandoned the harbor meeting." Evelyn's heart tightened despite herself. Adrian ended the call. "He chose you over half his empire." Serena gave a soft, humorless laugh. Men destroy themselves so creatively. Outside, engines roared into the loading yard. Roman arrived with only Luca and 4 loyal men, fewer than Adrian expected, but enough to turn the building silent. Roman entered through the main doors, his black suit replaced by a dark shirt and heavy coat. The wound in his side had reopened beneath the bandage, but he carried himself with the same rough, dangerous authority Evelyn had first seen at table 7. His gaze found her immediately. It moved over the restraints, the bruise forming near her wrist, and Adrian standing behind her. Something lethal settled into his face. "Let her go," Roman said. Adrian raised his pistol toward Evelyn's head. "The drive first." "You already have it. I have the files. I need the encryption key. Roman held up the duplicate device Evelyn had left behind. Daniel kept the key separate. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Evelyn understood. Roman had read her message. He had trusted the false copy and built his plan around it. Give it to him, Evelyn said. Roman looked at her. No. The evidence is not worth your life. This is not about my life. Adrian pressed the pistol closer to her temple. Place it on the floor and step back. Roman obeyed. The device slid across the concrete. Adrian motioned for one of his men to retrieve it. Evelyn felt the first sharp sting of betrayal until Roman's eyes met hers and shifted briefly toward the old sprinkler pipes overhead. The duplicate contained no key. He was buying time. Adrian inserted it into the computer. The screen flashed, then locked. What did you do? Trusted the doctor, Roman said. Evelyn twisted her left hand inward and pulled against the restraint until pain exploded through her thumb. The joint slipped free with a sickening pop. At the same instant, Roman drew his weapon. Gunfire shattered the warehouse. Serena's mercenaries fired at Roman's men, but Serena turned her pistol on Adrian's closest guard instead. Chaos erupted beneath the hanging lights. Evelyn tore her hand free, grabbed the metal chair, and drove it backward into the man behind her. Roman crossed the floor toward her, shooting with controlled precision until a round struck his shoulder and spun him against a conveyor belt. Roman! Evelyn reached him as Luca dragged Serena's last gunman behind cover. I am fine, Roman said through clenched teeth. You are bleeding in 2 places. Still fine. You are medically exhausting. Even now, the corner of his mouth moved. Evelyn cut the remaining restraint with a shard of broken metal. Across the warehouse, Adrian seized the original flash drive and fled through a door marked medical storage. He slammed the emergency lock behind him. Red warning lights began flashing overhead. A mechanical voice announced that the storage wing's fire containment system had been activated. Serena looked toward the ceiling. That system does not use water. Evelyn smelled the air and understood. Chemical suppression gas. Thick white vapor began pouring from vents along the eastern wall. Adrian intended to erase the records, suffocate anyone following him, and escape through the rear loading dock. Roman tried to stand, but his injured leg gave way. Blood spread beneath his coat. The emergency door to the storage wing was beginning to close. Adrian was less than 50 feet away, carrying the only evidence that could restore Evelyn's name and expose everyone responsible for the deaths at Street Catherine. Roman collapsed beside her, his breathing turning shallow. Evelyn looked toward Adrian disappearing through the gas, then down at the man whose empire had helped destroy her life and who had just surrendered half of it to reach her. Revenge waited beyond the closing door. A human life was bleeding out at her feet. Evelyn had only seconds to choose. Evelyn chose the life at her feet. She dropped beside Roman as the storage door continued sliding toward the floor, sealing Adrian and the evidence behind a wall of toxic vapor. Look at me, she ordered. Roman's eyes opened, unfocused but stubborn. Blood soaked through the bandage at his side and spread across his shoulder where the new bullet had torn through muscle. Go after him, he rasped. No, that drive clears your name. And you are losing yours, Evelyn. You do not get to make this choice for me too. She pressed both hands against the wound in his side. The bleeding was darker now, slower than an arterial spray but far too heavy. His pulse fluttered beneath her fingers. Around them, the warehouse had become a confusion of shouted orders, flashing red lights, and the metallic hiss of gas pouring into the sealed wing. Luca dragged a wounded guard behind cover while Serena kicked a fallen weapon away from one of Adrian's men. Medical supplies, Evelyn shouted. There should be an emergency trauma cabinet near the loading station. Serena pointed toward a glass case mounted beside the conveyor controls. There. Luca shattered it with the butt of his pistol and brought the case to her. Evelyn tore it open, found a pressure dressing, chest seal, IV tubing, and a pair of hemostatic clamps. The supplies were old but intact. She cut Roman's shirt wider and examined the shoulder wound. The bullet passed through, she said. That is the good news. Roman's mouth barely moved. You have a terrible way of delivering good news. The bad news is that your blood pressure is falling, and I am beginning to dislike how quiet you are. You usually dislike when I speak. I contain multitudes." Even Serena looked at her, surprised by the dry humor in the middle of chaos. Evelyn packed the side wound, reinforced the damaged sutures, then started an IV with hands that remained steady despite the fear tightening around her ribs. Roman had locked her in a room. He had ignored her choice. His empire had carried the counterfeit drugs that ruined her life. None of those truths disappeared because he was bleeding. But another truth stood beside them. When forced to choose between power and reaching her, Roman had abandoned half his territory without bargaining. He had trusted the false drive she created. He had come for her with fewer men than prudence demanded because delay might have cost her life. People were not made innocent by one sacrifice, but sometimes a sacrifice revealed the direction in which they were trying to change. "Stay awake," she said. Roman's cold gray eyes found hers. "Did I earn the right to ignore you yet?" "Not even close." "Good." His breathing hitched. "I was worried you might become sentimental." A violent metallic crash echoed from inside the storage wing. Evelyn looked toward the narrowing gap beneath the emergency door. Through the vapor, a dark figure moved toward the rear exit. Adrian had almost escaped. Serena followed Evelyn's gaze. "I can stop him." Evelyn assessed her in a single glance. Serena was still armed, still dangerous, still responsible for men who had tried to kill them. But Adrian had manipulated her as thoroughly as he had manipulated Roman. "Why would you?" Evelyn asked. "Because I do not enjoy being used. That is not the same as doing the right thing." "Tonight, it may be close enough." Serena pulled a filtration mask from an emergency hook, covered her face, and disappeared through the remaining gap seconds before the door sealed. Roman tried to lift his weapon. Evelyn pushed it away. "You are done shooting people. She will kill him. Then she will answer for it. Adrian does not deserve a trial. A trial is not for him. It is for every person he paid, every family he silenced, and every patient whose name was reduced to a number in his records." Roman stared at her through the pain. "You think the system will hold them? Not unless we force it to. And if it fails, then we expose the failure too. But if you put a bullet in Adrian's head, the truth dies with him, and powerful people will call him a lone criminal instead of admitting they helped him." Roman's jaw tightened. Revenge had governed most of his adult life because revenge was simple. Someone caused pain. He returned more of it. Evelyn was asking him to accept something slower, less certain, and far more difficult. Accountability that could not be controlled by his own hand. Another crash sounded behind the sealed door, followed by 2 gunshots. Then silence. Luca raised his weapon toward the rear loading bay. Seconds later, the emergency exit burst open, and Serena emerged through the rain, dragging Adrian by the collar of his coat. His pistol was gone. Blood ran from a cut above his eye, and his right wrist hung at an unnatural angle. In his left hand, he still gripped the silver flash drive. Serena threw him onto the concrete. "He tried to shoot me," she said, removing the mask. "He missed." Adrian coughed violently, rolling onto one elbow. "You think any of this matters?" He spat. "The files are encrypted. The physical records are burning. By morning, every executive involved will deny knowing my name." Evelyn rose carefully, leaving Luca to maintain pressure on Roman's wounds. She walked toward Adrian, her gaze shifting past him to the control panel beside the storage wing. A small green light blinked beneath the words, "Remote Compliance Backup." She looked at the access log on the display. Every manual override had been recorded, including Adrian's identity code and the time he triggered the chemical system. More importantly, the pharmaceutical facility's old safety network had automatically transmitted the emergency event, inventory data, and internal access logs to a municipal compliance server the moment toxic gas was released. Adrian had not destroyed the trail. He had authenticated it. Evelyn turned the screen so the others could see. "You just signed your own confession." Adrian's face changed. He lunged toward the control panel. Roman raised his pistol from the floor, but Evelyn stepped between them. "No, move," Roman said. "He framed you. He poisoned patients. He betrayed my family. and killing him will feel good for 10 seconds. She held Roman's gaze. Then every person above him will sleep easier because the only man who can name them is dead. Adrian laughed weakly. Listen to her, Roman. Even now she believes justice exists. Evelyn turned toward him. No. I believe evidence exists. Justice is what people have to build from it. Sirens approached in the distance, faint at first, then multiplying. The chemical alarm had summoned fire crews, emergency medical teams, and federal hazardous material responders. Roman looked from Adrian to Evelyn. His finger rested against the trigger. The old Roman would have fired before anyone reached the doors. He would have called it loyalty, vengeance, or protection, and never examined the difference. Slowly, he lowered the weapon. "Luca," he said, "secure him. Do not kill him." Adrian stared at him in disbelief. Roman's face hardened. "You wanted me to become predictable. Consider this my first surprise." 7 weeks later, the first federal indictments were announced. Adrian Cross was charged with conspiracy, trafficking counterfeit pharmaceuticals, obstruction, murder, and financial crimes spanning more than a decade. 3 executives from St. Catherine Medical Center were arrested before dawn. 2 state inspectors resigned after their payment histories were released. Malcolm Voss's disappearance was reopened as a homicide investigation, and Serena Ward received limited immunity in exchange for testimony and access to records from her organization. No one called her heroic. She had not become one. But for once, self-interest and truth had moved in the same direction. Evelyn's medical case was reopened by an independent board. The original accusations collapsed under the recovered shipping manifests, altered inventory logs, and internal hospital messages, proving she had tried to stop the counterfeit drugs. Her license was restored with a formal apology that arrived 4 years too late and contained none of the names of the patients who had died. Evelyn read it once, folded it, and placed it in a drawer. The document mattered, but it did not repair everything. Roman lost control of 2 major shipping routes after cooperating with investigators. Several captains accused him of weakening the DeLuca organization for a woman. Roman removed the men who had profited from the medical network and closed every route he could not audit personally. His empire became smaller, less profitable, and more dangerous to lead. For the first time, he did not confuse expansion with strength. He purchased the abandoned St. Catherine Annex in Evelyn's neighborhood and offered her the deed. She refused. "You cannot repair what your organization helped destroy by giving me a building," she told him. Roman accepted the answer without argument. Instead, they created an independent nonprofit trauma clinic governed by physicians, community representatives, and patient advocates. Roman funded the renovation through publicly documented accounts. He held no controlling seat on the board. On opening day, sunlight filled the restored emergency ward, while families, nurses, and former patients crowded the hall. Evelyn stood beneath a new sign bearing no donor's name, wearing a fitted cream blouse and a dark skirt, her beautiful round face brighter than Roman had ever seen it. Her dark auburn hair fell over her shoulders. And for once, she did not look like a woman preparing for the next attack. Roman approached in a charcoal suit, the scar above his eyebrow and the roughness in his face keeping him from ever appearing entirely civilized. He stopped beside her, not in front of her. "After everything I failed to see," he said quietly, "will you still let me stand beside you?" Evelyn studied him. "Beside me, Roman. Never above me. Never in front of my choices." "Agreed. You agreed to that once before." Regret crossed his face. "I know. This time, I need you to understand it." "I do." She searched his eyes and found no demand there. Only the patience of a man finally learning that love could not be taken by force or secured through fear. Evelyn rose onto her toes and kissed him. The kiss was not surrender. It was a decision deliberate, equal, and entirely her own. That night, Roman took her back to the Black Harbor Lounge. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Table 7 stood empty. 2 glasses waited on the mahogany bar, but Roman did not place one in her hand. He waited. Evelyn looked at the tequila, then at the man beside her. The last time she had sat there, she had raised a glass to accepting the life stolen from her. This time, she lifted it to the life she had rebuilt herself. Sometimes the people who claim to protect us are really protecting their control over us. Real love does not silence another person's judgment or make decisions in their name. It listens, accepts accountability, and creates room for both people to remain whole. Evelyn did not need Roman to give her strength, and Roman did not become worthy of her because he was powerful. He became worthy when he learned to use that power without taking away her freedom. Do you believe Roman truly earned Evelyn's trust? Or should she have made him prove himself longer? Share your answer in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more Mafia Boss romances where underestimated women do not wait to be rescued. They force the most powerful men in the room to become worthy of them.